advanced video tracking. In Google Tag Manager, you have the option of tracking YouTube embedded videos using the built-in features that already come pre-installed. However, what if you're using a third-party video service, like Vimeo? Well, in this lesson, we're going to cover exactly how Google Tag Manager can still be used to make sure that you're able to track your plays, completes, and even progress points. Let's take a look.
All right, it's Tracking Engagement Advanced Video Tracking. The lesson objectives for today, we're going to do a quick review on the YouTube trigger, just to make sure that you're familiar with that. Then we will move on to video platforms like Vimeo or Wistia, even others as well. Again, they're going to be a little bit more advanced because they don't have a built-in trigger or variables that we can use. The journey so far, we just covered lesson number 1. Welcome to Google Tag Manager Intermediate Edition. We are now on advanced video tracking. Then we will move on to page elements, the next level of e-commerce, otherwise known as enhanced e-commerce. And then we'll talk about custom dimensions and metrics, user ID tracking, and so much more. Advanced video tracking is what we're going to talk about right now, though. Are you using YouTube? That's the very first question we need to talk about. Of course, you're like many people. You're of course using YouTube. We're going to show you exactly how we had set that up before. Now remember, just very quickly, because we covered this in the basics course, we have our preview mode set up. I had actually set up some Google Analytics tags that fired with our video event, with our YouTube video here. And then we used the different triggers of our YouTube video trigger for a start, a complete event, and then it was 10, 20, and 30 seconds in. And we've, of course, enabled our variables to automatically track and tell us kind of what the values were at this point in time, at the point in time of the event. So to show you what that looked like, if we go down to our actual YouTube video here, so I click there, I click on the video here. You can see it's got our GTM video event that is firing. At that point in time, we actually sent the event. So the video event with some details around the video and how far it had gone. With any luck, about 10 seconds in, there'll be another one. There's the other video that fired. This was 10 seconds in. And then after a few more seconds, that'll be at the 20-second mark. And that's when we told the trigger to fire again. And at this point in time, there we go. I can click on variables and we can see what our video variables contain. So I can see the duration, the total number of seconds for this video, what the current number of seconds was at this point in time. I see it was YouTube and there was a progress mark. I see the video title, all this fun stuff. Now, this is great if you are using YouTube, but what if you are not? For example, at measurementmarketing.io, we've got a membership site. All of our videos are on Vimeo. So they're on Vimeo. So here's an example of that. So we go to, how about this video? So if I come down here, how do I track this? Now this looks just like a regular video, but it's not. It's Vimeo. I know that because I can inspect, right click and inspect. And when we pull this up, we can see all sorts of fun details around the video itself and kind of where it is. And in particular, whenever I do this, I'm just sort of looking at where I am. I can see up here, player.vimeo.com. Right? Now, again, I wouldn't consider myself a super technical individual, comfortable enough to do what I'm doing here. But what I'm doing is I'm just trying to figure out, okay, what video is this, especially if I'm trying to measure it. And so pretty quickly, I can kind of just scroll around and say, okay, what looks familiar? Okay, Vimeo. So this must be a Vimeo video player. So that's how I know it would be Vimeo. Now, well, I'm going to go ahead and close that out because we won't need that anymore. But now I got to track it. Now I want to be able to do the exact same thing that I'm doing with Google Analytics and the YouTube videos, but I really can't use the built-in trigger because that's really just made for YouTube. That's the Google Tag Manager trigger. So I've got to do something else. What am I going to do? I'm going to go to our buddy Google, and I'm going to Google Vimeo tracking Google Tag Manager. And when I do that, so Vimeo tracking Google Tag Manager, when I do that, I actually come down here, and the one that I want to show you is the one that's going to say Insights right here. So there's Vimeo tracking for GTM. Look for the one that says Insights here. When you click on this, this is from a company called Bounteous. It used to be called Lunametrics, and they had recently switched their names. So from Lunametrics to Bounteous, but it's the same organization. So in Bounteous, they have a recipe that they had created. Remember, recipe doesn't mean anything. It's just a fancy way of saying, like, here's a exported container that you can import and start to measure stuff, right? I just love the name recipe. Whoever came up with it was brilliant because it makes it really easy to use. But in this case, a GTM recipe. What are the ingredients to our little recipe? Well, I've got two tags. I've got an event tag where they fire the Vimeo tracking. I've got a custom tag where they're doing some the script to actually set it up and start listening for all the different video events. There's a trigger that they have set up to listen for the events. They've got variables that report information around the video itself. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you now. You can come to this, and now that you know how to find it, you can come to this and you can read through all of this. I will go through a little fast here, still slow enough, hopefully, for you to get the basics of it. But remember, if this is your first time doing anything like this, slow down. Go through this. Make sure you have a solid understanding of all this. There's a lot of stuff here to go through and read to pay attention to this. So just sort of be aware of that. What I want to do is I want to show you, as you have experience, kind of what you'll end up doing. As you'll come through the ingredients, you're going to download this file. That's what we're going to do. This is our JSON file. Okay. Now this is remember when we did our little import, this is our little Vimeo tracking JSON. This is our actual file. So we're just going to save this as, and then I'm going to call this, let's just call this Luna Vimeo tracking. That's what it is. So we're going to save it as that. So now I've got my JSON file saved. That is my import file for Google Tag Manager. So now I'm going to come into here. We're going to go into admin. I'm going to import the container. We're going to choose our file. We're going to import this recipe. Click on open. I'm going to go to an existing workspace. We're going to do our default because that works for us. Now, do I want to overwrite this? I hope right now you're going, no, Mercer, don't do that, because you would be correct. I do not want to overwrite, because if I do that, I will just import what's in that container, but I'm going to blow out all the other changes, which is not what I want to do. I want to add two things. So I'm going to go ahead and click where it says merge. And now it says overwrite conflicting tags or triggers, which in this case is fine because I know I do not have anything like this installed. I can already look and see. So I'm good. I'm going to go ahead and click on confirm. And when we do that, I have officially imported my tags, triggers, and variables. So does that mean I go ahead and publish and I'm off to the races? No, not at all. Never, ever with these imports do you want to do that. You always want to make sure that you've gone through each individual tag and you set it up and you've made sure that it's going to work the way that you think it's going to work. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start first with our Google Analytics. Actually, we'll go from the bottom here and then work our way up. So the bottom, the first thing they did was they created the Vimeo tracking plugin folder, right? That again is in folders. They've automatically imported that. So now I have all of my different tags, triggers, and variables in the actual folder. Kind of cool, nice way to keep it organized. For now, I'm going to keep that, but if I didn't want to, I can move it around if I wanted to do that, no problem. So I'm going to go back to overview here. Second thing they did was they created this Google Analytics event for Vimeo tracking. Okay, so they've already named it. I'm going to click on that and just take a look at how it was set up. And here's the big reason why. Some of these recipes, this one in particular, they were set up long ago. They were set up in a very certain way that worked back in that version of Google Tag Manager. And sometimes that's different than what Tag Manager is set up now to do. So I'm going to show you this. I'm just editing. So we're going to click on edit here. So now I've got my track type event. It's a universal analytics. So far, so good. They're doing category of videos. I'm actually going to go ahead and keep that. So I'm going to say that's fine to keep it videos. But if I wanted to, I could change it and say, no, I want this to be engagement here. And then I want the actual, you know what, I will change. I'm going to change one thing here. So instead of video, so we'll keep it videos. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to say, well, no, I want the video name first to show in action. And then I'm just going to kind of copy and paste these out. I'm going to put in the video action. So the video name first. Remember, this is how events work in Google Analytics. There's a hierarchy to them. So category drills down into actions, drills down into label. So now I've got videos. I'm going to be able to click into videos. I'll see my video names. I can click on my video names, and then I'll see my video actions. So that's more useful for me, right? As an implementer, that's more useful for me. It doesn't mean it's going to be useful for you. Just this is an example of something why you want to go through these and just kind of TBV. Remember, trust but verify that these are correct for you, useful for you. So now I've got that set up. Then I'm going to come through here. So non-interaction false, which is going to be correct. So I want it to report as an interaction event, an effect bounce rate if that's what's going on there. Then it says here, okay, well, what's our Google Analytics settings variable? It goes into the tracking ID. It's overriding some stuff. I don't necessarily need any of this to actually come through here. Now, why? Because in our regular, this is kind of a legacy installation of how Google Analytics used to be set up. So what I'm gonna do is I'm going to check this off, and then I'm going to switch this to our actual gas variable, and that's it. So now it's kind of what you were familiar with an event. So now I've just sort of updated it. So instead of having that little override feature, and if you ever have a container that you're importing and everything's overwritten and you have that little override feature, I should say, with your Google Analytics settings, it's probably just because this was created before there was a Google Analytics settings variable, because that's a relatively new variable just in the last few years here. So now I've got the Google Analytics settings, and so I'm telling it where to go, and then it's got our firing trigger. So let's go look at that. So now how does this work? This works when there's an event name that says Vimeo track pop up. Okay, cool. Now again, we're not setting any of this up. We're just importing this, but something in this recipe creates an event in Tag Manager that says Vimeo track. So I'm kind of looking forward to seeing how this works. So now we've got that. We're going to go ahead and save our updated GA event. So at this point, I've done our GA event. I've done our actual event trigger. Then we've got the data layer variables, so DLV, and you can see this is, again, another great reason to actually go through and work on your naming conventions, because just by the names alone, I can see what they're doing, right? So in this case, data layer variable video name, I'm not going to adjust these because this is again, a container. It's a recipe. It's something that somebody already created and verified and made sure that it worked, and then they exported everything. So I'm not going to break anything here, because if I do change this, that's what's going to happen. It's not going to work as expected. So I'm going to go ahead and keep this the same, but that's all it's doing is going into the data layer and pulling out some details. This is for the name. This one's going to pull out the video action. Right, so far so good. Then I've got debug mode, just a variable that's a built-in variable that was activated. So that's all that is. So we have that, and then we're going to click on our big custom HTML events. So here's one thing that I do with these. I don't actually call these CU for custom. I call these scripts. This is just my personal preference. Anything that's kind of like a script that I'm running on the page, this is what I do. I just call it script, and it's kind of a one-off script. It runs at one time, and it doesn't run over and over again, and it's not like a platform like Google Analytics where there's a lot of different tags. I just call it script. Keep it nice and easy. So in this case, it's script for Vimeo tracking, and I'm going to call this, I'm just going to reverse this a little bit. Again, this is just because I like hierarchy. So the very first thing I'm going to do is script Vimeo tracking. I'm going to say script, this is Lunametrics, and Vimeo tracking. So that way I just know. And the reason is, oops, I didn't realize I had that in there. So let's back that out, and we'll just say this is Vimeo tracking. There we go. And really I should change this to Bounteous. We'll just update this for them because that's what it is now. Instead of, it used to be called Lunametrics, same company. So script Bounteous Vimeo tracking. So now I have that in there. Then here is my actual custom HTML tag. So I'm not going to change this, but I just want to kind of go through this. Now, if you, again, don't consider yourself to be a technical individual, if none of this means anything to you, I personally think that is okay to get started. But eventually, you will have to have a basic understanding of how some of this works. You need to be familiar with JavaScript. That's all this is. You know it's JavaScript because it says that, and because it says this right here, where it says script. So JavaScript is something you're going to see again and again and again and again in Google Tag Manager. And the better that you get at JavaScript, the more that Tag Manager will open up to you, and the more that Tag Manager will be able to do for you with the power of JavaScript. But in this case, this is actually kind of a neat way to at least get exposure to it. But I'm not going to change anything, but I do want to kind of go through and I just generally speaking get an idea of kind of how it functions. Again, this is not a JavaScript course, so we're not going to go into intricate detail, but you can come through here. You can see it's sort of activating into the API. It's looking for stuff. I can see where it says play, pause, watch to the end, and it replies back with some values there. So I know that it's already tracking that sort of stuff. Then we've gone through here. Here's where we've got our percentages coming through in terms of the 25, 50, 100% percentage, the actual sending of events that it's coming through. Now, what's these little pushes? Maybe a data layer push? Who knows, right? Like, who'd be doing that? But again, I'm just going to kind of quickly go through this. I don't see anything updated here. Here's our percentages, every 25%. That's going through. You can see some directions that'll be through here. There's some configuration details. So again, go through these, go slowly through these, and kind of get an idea of they'll again drop you hints, right? And they'll tell you like, here's how this works. You'll see comments in here that shows how it works or what it does. So very, very useful stuff here. So I'm going to go ahead and move forward. I've got this firing currently on all pages, which is when Tag Manager loads. That's the page view trigger. So that's fine. So at the page view event, I should say. So now I'm going to go ahead and save this. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to preview it. So now we're going to go to preview. Just to make sure, again, I'm not publishing it because this is a custom script. I didn't write the script. I got to make sure it works for my site. So I'm going to, in this case, just refresh my preview. Then I'm going to refresh this side. And as we come through here, let's just see if this works. So let's just kind of get rid of this part at the bottom. There we go. So now we're going to play our video. Actually, first things first, I want to see, did our script load? And it did, right? So it's already fired the script. Essentially, the script is just listening now for things that are happening on Vimeo. So I'm going to click on this video itself. And look at that, Vimeo track. So at Vimeo track, there we go, I fired an event. At that point in time, my event came through and it pushed through to Google Analytics. In the category of videos, it came through and there was the action getting started now. The track leads to Google Analytics using goals. The label was play. And then it will continue to go through. And we're not going to play this one because it's going to be a little while, but it will at the 25% mark, the 50% mark, at the 75% mark. That's when it's supposed to be firing per that script. More than likely, that's exactly what it does. I can tell you from experience, it is what it does because we use this on our own sites. But you can see video track. I just did another one. When I stopped it, Vimeo tracking came in and said, hey, there's another video event that fired. And this was a pause where it paused the actual video. So pretty neat stuff. Now I can track Vimeo videos without having to use anything that's in the built-in because I know Tag Manager and because I have the ability to actually import somebody else's recipe. But again, word of warning, word of caution, recipes are dangerous stuff, right? Like these are the things where you're bringing in code from somebody else. So you've got to get it from a site that you trust. So, the things that you find on Mojave, I think things that you find here at Bounteous, generally speaking, are really good. There's a few other sites that are out there that are really, really reputable. And you'll get a feeling of those, right? Of where they are and how to trust those. But go slow. Go slow and take the opportunity as you are bringing these in. Don't just blindly, please don't go blindly in there and just start pulling in all of this containers and importing these different recipes because it can really screw things up. So you want to go slow, especially when you're just starting out and you're just importing, and understand where you are. Remember, sometimes you slow down, you get there faster. And it's like that a lot with Google Tag Manager. And it's a huge opportunity to be able to jump into how the script works. It kind of shows you how in this case, it actually breaks it down. Like, that's awesome. That's such a great opportunity for you to not only improve your measurement ability with Tag Manager, but also to improve your technical skill set and get used to it. So really, really fantastic thing. Now, I promised you we would talk about other platforms like Wistia. Well, guess what? What if I have Wistia and I'm trying to figure out how to do Wistia? What am I going to do? Guess what? Wistia tracking, Google Tag Manager. Google Tag Manager, there we go. Google Analytics Wistia video tracking for GTM. Guess who it's from? Bounteous, also known as Lunametrics. So there we go. There's our container JSON file. So I would click into here. This is for Wistia. I would just go ahead and save as, and this would be my Luna Wistia tracking, and it's going to be the same concept. I'm just going to import now another container. Now, I actually don't have a Wistia video that's set up for demonstration, but it will work exactly the same way. And I would do exactly the same thing. I would go through here, and I would go, once that imports, I'm going to go step by step by step through each of these and just make sure that they are properly set up for my own personal installation. For example, what if I had already created a data layer variable called video action? Well, if I had already done that and they import a new one on top of that, there's a conflict there, right? That's something I would need to take care of. So this is not just a cookie cutter kind of thing that you can watch me do and then just snap it onto your own container. Now, in a lot of cases, that will work because you won't call things like this. But eventually, as you get more and more experience with Tag Manager, you're going to see conflicts. So you want to go slow. You want to make sure that nothing conflicts with each other and just make sure that the setup is proper, that you TBV. Remember, trust but verify, trust but verify, trust but verify. That means trust that you set it up correctly, but go back with that attitude as that it's wrong. You've messed it up entirely and you need to figure out where you messed it up and look for where it's wrong. Because when you do that is where you find these mistakes that otherwise you would have just skipped over. So again, preview it. And then once you've previewed it and it's successful, then you would go ahead and submit. And for those of you who had come with me through the Google Tag Manager Basics course that we did here at CXL Institute, you know there's one other thing you really should be doing, which is going into Google Analytics and actually seeing the results themselves. So why not? Let's go ahead and do that as well, just to kind of walk the talk here. So yes, I see Tag Manager is firing events, but is Analytics actually receiving the events? Is it receiving them in the right way? I'm going to go into our demo view. Let's take a look at that. And what we should see in our real-time reports, we go to events. We should see our video category showing up. There we go. There's a videos category. There's the action. These are the the video titles that were coming through, and then these were the actual events, the actual things that were happening, the actions that were taking place, the video actions themselves. Play, pause, and of course, if I kept that video playing, it would do 25%, 50%, 75%, whatever else that the script was tracking for. But we can tell that it's working, it's in analytics, and it's in the right spot. So far so good. At this point, now I would be safe to say, okay, I'm going to go ahead and publish it. I would still, of course, TBV it after that. So we'll call this Vimeo tracking. I would go back and I would TBV it again just to make sure, and triple check and have somebody else triple check it, just because I'm paranoid and I want to make sure that I didn't screw something up, right? You always want to TBV that way, because that way at least you've tried. Like, at least you went through and you looked for where things were incorrect and wrong. That's where you find the very simple errors that otherwise you end up skipping. So with that, we'll go ahead and start to wrap up this. We talked about YouTube, we talked about Vimeo, we talked about Wistia. What do you think happens when you're using something else, right? Guess what we're going to do. And I know, hopefully at this point, you're kind of like, all right, Mercer, I got this down. What we're going to do is we're going to use Google. And we're going to say, okay, JW Player. Guess what? All these others come up, right? In this case, you've got Analytics Mania, another great guy with Julius out there at Analytics Mania. Has some really great stuff that he takes advantage of. And so he's got JW Player on here. And there's others as well that you will see. Analytics Mania also, like I said, a great site to take a look at for this. I would trust that. I would always TBV it, right? No guarantees, things change, but jump in, take a look at it, see if it fits for you. But whatever your player is, chances are somebody has already created something for it. So you can take advantage of what you've got available in Google Tag Manager, especially if you're using something else. So now you know how to solve these more advanced video tracking problems. So we've covered the review of YouTube, we covered Vimeo and how to actually set it up using Vimeo. With Wistia, exactly, basically the same steps from the same, in this case, the same supplier of Bounteous with their recipe. And then other video platforms. Other people have done other things with other video platforms. So if you're looking for some HTML5 video player, that's out there. So whatever your video player is, chances are somebody has created something. If you don't have the technical skills, and maybe it's a brand new on the market video player that just isn't out there yet, reach out to the community, maybe even reach out to Upwork and have somebody help you out with it if you don't have your technical skills. And of course, developers. Now here's a few lesson resources. I wanted to give you the two links to both the Vimeo and the Wistia video tracking for GTM. Again, they're both on Bounteous, previously known as Lunametrics. If you've heard of Lunametrics, same company. And Google, right? Little a wink and a smile there, but Google, very important, because Google.com is going to be a fantastic resource for you when it comes to Google Tag Manager and finding different solutions that are out there. Your next steps: find your player. If you're using YouTube, definitely just make sure it's setting up and working. If you're using Wistia or Vimeo or some other player, go through, import a recipe, do it on a test container if you want. You don't have to use your real live container that you're working on for a client or your company or somebody else's. Import it into a test container. Just get used to it, play around with it, and make sure you TBV, trust but verify. You're going to hear me say that a lot with these different recipes. Test. Go slow, because many times you slow down, you end up getting there faster. Otherwise, you go a little too fast, you import things too quickly, things get messed up, then you got to go through and debug for a few hours trying to figure this thing out. And if you had just slowed down and triple checked your steps along the way using this TBV method of trust but verify, you would have gotten there a lot faster. You would have finished it out a lot faster. And once we've got those done, we are ready to move on.
So there you have it, tracking engagement, advanced video tracking. At this point, you should have a solid understanding of how to work with a wide variety of video platforms in Google Tag Manager. That way you're not just limited to the YouTube option. Once you're ready, let's move on with tracking engagement page elements. See you there.